What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the DK Garage. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Joe.
Joe, what did we talk about today?
We started with the Clash, went to the duels, went driver by driver, talking about the DraftKings information, value, and what to expect for the Daytona 500.
Yeah, we also gave you a preview of our race guide, what we're going to be giving you guys each and every week. This episode is going to be more normal for us finally moving forward. This is what we've been looking for. So with all that being said, let's get into this video. All right, man. Daytona. We've been waiting for this for almost 100 days, and we're finally here. And this week has already been pretty fun to watch.
It's speed weeks, man. It's always exciting, and it started off with the Clash, which was pure excitement at the end.
Yeah. There was some little dry moments, I guess, kind of early to mid-race, but there was a few guys. I mean, remember Kurt Busch? He just totally blew past the corner. There was another guy who just totally blew past the first corner. So there was some stuff before the fireworks at the end of the race. All in all, I think it was a great little preview for what's to come in week 2. Obviously, we saw your guy, Kyle Busch, at least your guy for this year.
Yeah, he's not my guy. He's not my favorite driver by any means, but he's somebody I'm looking at big time this year who I think's going to be out to prove something. So it was cool to see him get a win early. I think it's really going to do a lot for his confidence.
Yeah, he looked good. Didn't look particularly dominant. Honestly, got that win pretty lucky. I mean, if it wasn't for Chase body slamming and taking out his buddy.
The two best buds right there kind of got a little squirrely, but I'm sure their friendship is still rock solid. But
yeah, I'm sure they're fine. But you like to see the guys go for the win right at the very end. Plus, on the exhibition race, it was fun to watch. But there was guys in there like Hamlin, Truex, that really showed that they're going to be contenders next week as well, and potentially this week going into Daytona.
Yeah, and Truex, in my opinion, had the best car throughout that entire race. He really had a dominant car that he was able to really put it wherever he needed to make passes, and unfortunately he got a little bit squirrely there at the end and put it into the wall. So
yeah, for those of you who may not have watched it yet, a lot of the guys were cutting the course, putting a lot of dirt on the course, so it almost looked like we got a preview for the dirt race. So maybe Truex won't be so hot in the dirt race because he definitely lost control over that. But yeah, all in all, it was a fun race to watch, and it led perfectly into qualifying the next day. If you saw practice earlier in the day, the Toyotas seemed to be the fastest cars.
Yeah, everybody was all over Bubba Wallace, had the fastest car out there, which was awesome to see how Denny Hamlin and his knowledge had everything set up well for that car to come out at the gate hot. And I don't know if Michael Jordan was there watching, but I'm sure he was sitting somewhere pretty proud of seeing that car, in practice at least, being the number one car right out of the gate.
Yeah, he held the pole position for quite some time, but what really surprised most people was the Chevys. They appeared to be very slow in practice, and they've been dominant. I think they've won the last 4 or 5 front row starts, most notably just from Team Hendrick. So they're always dialed in qualifying, but practice they looked off. But when it came time to show up, they showed up. We saw Byron edge out Bubba Wallace, and he held the pole position for a while, and he held it actually all the way till the very end until Alex Bowman took it away.
Alex Bowman had so much speed. He had a whole full mile per hour over the second place car even, and that's his teammate
William Byron.
Yeah. So you see Team Hendrick showing up off the hauler with some speed. It's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out on Sunday.
Right. But the thing about qualifying and race is they're not quite the same. There's qualifying trim and then there's race trim. And once we got to the duels, the Chevys looked good, but they did not look as good as Toyota, and they did not look as good as Ford's, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Ford didn't show up at all in qualifying. They were really, really slow, and it's one of the advantages getting to do the entire process throughout the week, which we haven't had because of the impact of some of the situations with COVID. That now these guys are able to do this and make those adjustments so that by race day or even showing up at the duels that they're ready to go.
Yeah. So the first duel was fun. There was some good little back and forth. Hamlin was good. He looked like he was going to be up there a lot, but in the end, Amarola pulled it out. Logano almost got him, but Amarola led the most laps. He led 52 laps. Was really just the guy. He just good pit strategy. Everything played in his favor, and they took that win, which is going to be good for his starting position.
Yeah, it's definitely a big help to go out and solidify yourself in a duel. Christopher Bell finishing second was somebody I was really surprised to see how he performed as in that new equipment. Knew he was going to be fast. Just seeing him in that situation, super speedway racing, and seeing him have some success early on gives him some confidence too. So I'm excited to see what's out there.
He's got a fast car. He's got a good car. He seemed to be right on par really with the speed we were seeing from Bubba Wallace too. But Ryan Newman, the Newmanator, he finished third. Logano, like I said, he went for it at the very end and just couldn't quite do it, so he finished fourth. Kyle Larson, he had a top 7 finish, not too bad. But for the most part, other than Alex Bowman, who kind of dropped to the rear, he thought they at one point may have had a vibration, maybe there was some engine trouble. Appears they've diagnosed everything, and I think it's just electrical. But for the most part, they're okay, but they did not look good in the duels at all. They ran around. They actually went down, I think, 2 laps. So, but really, Duel 1 is not what most people are talking about. It's Duel 2.
Yeah, Duel 2 had all the action. It was excitement, and if you watched any of the broadcast, Clint Boyer and Jeff Gordon were on it. They knew what was coming on the second duel because there wasn't much action, like you said, on the first go around. So we knew there was going to be some build up, some people ready to go, and then there was a little bit of a rain delay, so it built up everything a little bit more, and we saw some fireworks. That's for sure.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think the delay. I was probably about 2 hours of a delay because of rain. It came through. It actually washed out the track. The track dryer actually slid down the embankment, and that was a little embarrassing for NASCAR. But they did get the race in, but I think that delay only added to just that aggression that we saw from the guys. They didn't cut each other really any slack right from the get-go. It was go, go, go. And we saw a couple cautions. We didn't see any cautions at all in the first race, but we saw 2 or 3 in the second.
Yeah, and like I said, there was fireworks, and the guys that ended up being at the front at the end of the race are guys that usually are a little bit more aggressive, and Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, guys that you are used to seeing at the front of the pack in super speedway aggressive type drivers, they were all up there.
So really, for most of the duel, William Byron actually was the best car. He led 34 laps, the most by far out of anybody, and he just looked good. Those guys get run, but they just couldn't get around him. I was like, wow, he's gonna be a force on Sunday. Late in the race, he got caught up in someone else's mess. A guy trying to make that transfer spot didn't quite go his way, and unfortunately for William Byron, he's going to go to a backup car. So we'll see what he has for Sunday. But he looked like the class of the field. And then another guy that was really good, a little sneaky, but was Harvick. He led 11 laps, second most. Truex also, he led 9. So both those guys were up there. Veterans, not really what you would think of when you come to like super speedway racers, drivers, but they look good. Bubba Wallace, I think he probably ended up passing more cars than anybody. Because he'd make his way to the front, and as soon as he'd get up there, he'd ditch who he was with, and it wouldn't pan out, and he'd drop to the rear, and he'd do it all over again. So I think if he can keep his nose clean on Sunday, he's definitely going to be a guy to watch out for.
Yeah, he's got the speed, and so it's going to be exciting to see how all that pans out. But really, the duels, in my opinion, it's the open race. That's all the drivers that are fighting their way in. That's what caused that late accident that William Byron got in. There were a couple guys looking to fight for their spot on the Daytona 500, and they clipped each other and caught up a couple good cars in the mess. So that's one of the things that you have to take into consideration when you're at a super speedway. There's guys that are there's races within races.
Yeah. I think the one that took out William Byron involved Noah Gregson and Garrett Smithley. Smithley had a run. He went to the middle, and I think at that same time, Brad Kay was coming up just a little bit, kind of pinched him. He hooked Brad, and a bunch of cars just went spinning into the wall and into the infield.
Yeah, so with that, we had Ryan Preece and Austin Cindric race their way in the first duel.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the second one, it was David Reagan, and then Kaz Gralla got in due to the lack.
Reagan, yeah, he fell back, I think, on his qualifying time, and he had to have Reagan be the highest guy to finish, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have made it. Because he had a wrecked car. He was one of the guys in that wreck.
Yeah, so now you see Colleague actually get a spot on the Daytona 500, albeit at position 40. So it's going to be interesting to see if they'll be able to stay with the lead draft and maintain speed throughout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with that being said, let's start talking about Daytona, because that's why we're here. That's why people watching are here. They want to know what's going to happen in the race.
Yeah, the Daytona 500, it's happening. It's finally here, and I'm super excited. I know we've been talking about this for some time now, and being able to just have a normal conversation about our DraftKings involvement and putting together our race guide and all the fun process that's now a weekly thing. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's this is the best. This is one of those races I feel is, if you don't know that much about NASCAR, this is the best week to play, because nobody knows what's going to happen in this race, to be honest. Anything can happen, and that's what makes it so fun. The cars are literally for, 500 miles.
200 laps.
200 laps. They are inches off of each other. Inches away at 200 miles an hour.
Inches from the wall, 3 wide, 4 wide. It's serious action, and super speedway action, in my opinion, is some of the most fun racing that you can have and witness.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to get this underway.
Yeah. It's fun because the guys that we know are the best teams, the Harvicks, the Kyle Busches, Chase Elliott's, Hamlin's, whatnot. On most racetracks, those are the guys that are going to be up front contending for the win. But when it comes to Daytona or Talladega, anybody can win. We've seen Justin Haley win. It was a rain delay,
shortened,
but it doesn't matter.
He was in the position.
He was in front. But we've seen other guys sometimes get their first win. Amarolo's won on super speedways. Blaney, who's also won, it hasn't had much success at other tracks, but on super speedways, it really kind of lends to some of their other skills.
Yeah, and there's a lot of drivers that take advantage of the situation, and why strategy plays so much into what we're doing here.
Right.
Stack the back is the method that you and I have gone to multiple times over the years in building lineups, and that's what I'm using, and how I'm going to approach most of this.
So before we get into strategy and the drivers, we're gonna get into all that, but let's talk about what the race is. So 500 miles, like we said, means 200 laps. That's if we don't go to overtime.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably go to overtime, so we'll probably see 205 laps, 206 laps, something like that. The track is 2.5 miles long. There are if without factoring in cautions, there are technically 140 potential performance points. So that's your fastest laps and your laps led. That is enough that it has to be factored into your strategy, but it's not as much as we're going to see at most tracks. And then we have 2 stages, and technically 3, but we have the first stage, 65 laps. We have the second stage, also 65, and then the third stage, the final stage, 70 laps. Denny Hamlin he's a 3-time winner, but 2 in a row.
2 in a row.
Going for 3 in a row. Let's get into this.
Yeah, so Denny Hamlin right out of the gate is my favorite. I've picked him in our predictions podcast, and he's somebody that has the ability to show up every day with a race car that's there to win. He's got the knowledge and experience. We saw what his knowledge was able to do by giving the specs and everything to the 2311 racing team and the way that Bubba Wallace was able to run. So I'm looking forward to seeing him potentially out there again, getting a three-peat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of guys in interesting positions due to the outcome of the duels, setting the starting order. Obviously, we mentioned Alex Bowman's on the front row. Looks like he's going to stay there. Eric Almirola is probably going to be moving up. Will be moving up because William Byron's going to the rear.
Yeah.
But we see guys like Ricky Stenhouse. He's starting 21st, 20th after they move him up. But he's there. You got Brad Kay, 6-time plate or super speedway winner. He's starting 24th. Your guy Hamlin, he's starting 25th. Matty D, 23rd. There's some great value, some great drivers starting pretty far in the back.
And that's why I said stack the back is the method I'm going to, because there is such a great pool of drivers back in the back that bring so much value. Sure, there are price tags there, but all the place differential in DraftKings is really what we're looking for, in my opinion. So we're looking for guys that have had success in super speedway action and that are in the back, because whenever you're starting at the front, you're risking a lot more potential for that place differential to go down. Mm-hmm. So if you start in the top 10 and with super speedway action being as crazy as it is, you see these three wide packs that you can be shifted from the top 5 back to the bottom of, I guess, in the 30s really quick.
Well, as an example, William Byron last year, he started front row. I think he started second, possibly in the pole. We'll look that up later. But he wrecked out early. He was one of the first guys to wreck in last year's 500. He finished with minus, so that's negative 32 DraftKings points.
And it was all place differential.
All place differential.
So whenever you're at a super speedway, and whenever you can start in the back and work your way up to the front throughout the race, or even in one lap, you can make up quite a few positions. So it's one of those opportunities to find value in drivers that are in the rear that are either priced higher because they didn't qualify as high, mm-hmm. or they're just might not be in typical good equipment, that they're priced at a relatively low price tag, that in a super speedway they're doing a lot of drafting, a lot of pack work, and if they don't lose that main draft, they can pay off in value.
Right. So last year, let's just go over what the optimal lineup was. And before I tell you who the drivers were, this was their starting positions for the optimal lineup. The best starting position, our highest starting position for the optimal lineup was 21st.
Yeah.
Then it 27th, 29th, 30th, 36th, 39.
So nobody picked in this scenario was higher than in 21st place. So that, in my opinion, the guy who utilizes this was using the stack the back method, and that's why I've continued to develop that over years and hone in on it, because you start looking at some of the names of those drivers and you start seeing some pretty good guys that are competitors in super speedways when we see that.
Yeah. So 2 of those guys, well, really 3 of those guys, pretty top tier last year. Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, they were both in there, and Clint Boyer, also really good equipment. But then you have Brendan Gaughan, which we're all pretty bummed that he's not racing. Even he wouldn't have been racing this year anyway. It would have been Noah Gragson with that car. But he just knew how to get around super speedway and be there at the end. But then Corey LaJoie, who was starting 36th, and then David Reagan, who is in this race, kind of doing a little one-off. Those are guys who know how to get around the track, get through the accidents, but it's only the only reason why they're in the optimal is because of the starting position.
Yeah, and that's really what we're taking into consideration. So when we're putting together our race guide and doing our track history segment and providing information for all the viewers and everybody out there, we're trying to make this as constructive as possible with as much relative data as we can. Mm-hmm. So we've compiled all the super speedway information and sorted it to be able to easily glance and see hey, there's some strategy here and some value that we can take and utilize it when we're constructing these lineups.
Yeah. So if you look at some of the all-time stats at super speedways, now this factors in for both Daytona and Talladega, which there are some differences, but it's still super speedway racing. You're inches away
A lot of
from
pack
each other.
racing.
Yeah. So it's still good information. The all-time winner, active driver, of course, is Brad Kay. He's got 6 wins. Hamlin's got 5. Logano's got 4. Blaney's won twice. And then there's a bunch of other guys and Harvick's actually surprised me. I didn't realize he'd won 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So he's another guy who looked pretty good in the duels. But there's a lot of talent out there this year going to the place differential like you're talking about. Like I said, Brad Kay, 6 wins. He's got a top 10% of 34%. That's good. That's good. He's raced 47 races at a plate track. Super speedway track. So let's get into the driver by driver.
Yeah, let's do that because you mentioned Brad Keselowski, and he is the 3rd most expensive driver, and there's a reason for it. Is he's starting there in 24th. He has the great history at super speedways. Maybe it's not all at Daytona, but he has the ability to make that car a winning car at a super speedway for sure.
Yeah. I will definitely be using Brad Kay in some lineups because of the PD upside. But lately, for me personally, he's been so unfortunate with other people's accidents, and we saw it in the duels. So I have a hard time going too heavy on him when you got a guy who's only a couple $100 more, who's starting a position further back and is a 2 or 3-time winner here in Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, and it's why he's the most expensive driver. He's got that history. He was my pick before knowing he was even going to be in starting 25th, so I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him because of his where he's starting at, and our projections really represent why we think that he's going to be out there performing. So we have this projections built into our race guide. Mm-hmm. So that you can see where the driver's starting position is and what that projected finish might look like based on some of the stuff that we've worked on throughout the years.
Right. So we have Chase Elliott. He's $100 less than Hamlin. He's pretty good super speedway racer. But he's starting 12th. How are you feeling about Chase Daytona 500?
He's going to be somebody that's going to be close to reaching value. He's the former champion. He's going to be a competitor. I think he's got the equipment that will make sure that he's there at the end. If he doesn't get caught up in any of the accidents, I'm sure we're bound to see. Mm-hmm. So I'm expecting some competition from him.
Yeah, I like Chase. I'll definitely have some exposure to him as well. We mentioned Brad Kay, who's the next guy on the list, but right below him, $100 cheaper is Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney was my pick before the season to win 500. And based on qualifying, wasn't loving that pick, but how he finished in the duels and kind of just how everything played out, and also the clash, I still like him. He's starting 14th, so there is some place differential upside there. You know he's going to be getting some fastest laps, and he's probably going to get some laps led too. He finished 2nd last year. Really came so close to winning. Much like very similar to the duels this year where he kind of got taken out and then Kyle Busch, Joe Gibbs, equipment came in and beat him. It's kind of similar to what happened last year, the Daytona. He was battling with Newman and then obviously got Newman loose, slowed him up a little bit, and then here comes Hamlin just blowing right by him. So I still like Blaney. I think he's in a good spot. I'm glad he's not starting top 5. That makes it a lot harder to want to use him. But 14th, there's still some PD. So I like him.
Yeah, and then we get into guys that are now in the $9,000 range with Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch. To me, those 3 are all the same play for the most part. You're not really there's it's pack racing. It's going to be different than if, Kevin Harvick truly has a leg up on Joey Logano because of some history. It's a little bit more wild. I'm not going to have a ton of exposure in that price range for the value that you're looking at there.
No, if you're looking at just the price breakdown, it's going to be hard to use Logano. You're definitely going to want to use him in tournaments, especially if you're going over 20 lineups. You're going to want to have him because he's a good plate racer. I told you he's got 4 wins. Harvick also, he's got 3 wins. He's really good. Kyle Busch is one of those guys that I know before he retires, he's going to win the 500. He just has to. He's got too much of a historic career to not have a 500 trophy in his trophy case. But this is tough. 10th, 9,500, when his teammate Martin Truex, who's also not that great of a plate racer, but he's starting 26 and he's $200 cheaper.
And then I would lend to the stack-to-back strategy. If you're going to spend up for anybody in that price range, I'd rather take that risk. Even though he doesn't have as much history, he's got more upside because of that PD.
Yeah. All right. Is there any chance you roster Alex Bowman or William Byron at all at 9,200 and 9,000 respectively?
Well, William Byron having to start in the back already, he's negative 38 spots. So to me, it's in a scenario like he was last year where he could get in an accident and just completely blow the pot. So I'm staying away from him. Alex Bowman had a little issue. It sounds like they've resolved it. So I might have a little bit of exposure, especially in GPP tournaments, just to have a little bit of exposure in case he does have some domination and can score a lot of performance points. So I'll have a little bit sprinkled in some GPPs, but out in the cash, I'm staying away.
Yeah, cash, both guys I think are out for me, but I actually kind of like the strategy of playing Byron over Bowman if you're going to roster either of the two, because Byron's going to be running a different strategy. And if they can get up front, I know they're going to back up, but I know they brought a good backup car. It's Cindric. They're going to have speed. Is it going to be as good? Maybe not. But if he gets out front, he can get around this track. He won the fall race here, the regular season finale last year, first win of his career. Maybe starting in the back. I know, like you said, he's already negative 38 place differential. He's in the hole immediately. But he's also maybe a little safer too back there. Get through the first stage, do some different pit strategy. If he gets out front, I kind of like him.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and it makes sense. It's more of a GPP strategy, like I said.
Definitely not going heavy on him. I'm not putting all my eggs in the William Byron basket, but I think if you're looking at 10, 15% exposure, it's one of those things that's risky, but it could pay off because if he's one of those cars who gets to the accidents at the end, and he's going against guys that are normally, back of the pack kind of guys, he's going to have a faster car. He's going to be able to outperform them.
Yeah, and so that takes us to the next driver down into that price range under $9,000 in the $8,000 price range with 8,800 Kurt Busch. He's starting 20th, so he's on
right
that borderline.
Yeah, he's right on that line.
On that start or the stack the back approach. He's got a lot of good history at super speedways, so he's going to have some exposure in my lineups. I'm not going to go very heavy, but I definitely want to sprinkle him in. Yeah,
I'm going to use a little bit of him too. He's one of those guys, if he can keep it clean and just avoid the accidents, he's going to be at the end. He's going to be strong, but he's just time and time again, similar to his brother, usually getting into someone else's mess. So, alrighty. Eric Almirola, starting third, moving up to second. How do you feel about him? Well, he did dominate the first duel.
He did dominate the first duel. We saw that he had speed. He's one of those guys that I think, again, lends himself well to the GPP strategy. Not really in my cash strategy at all. I will sprinkle him in a couple GPP lineups because he has the potential to get a lot of potential performance points. But it's, again, not typically how the super speedway action lends to the shape up. It's a lot of shuffling, and you really have to lead a lot of laps for that strategy to pay off.
Yeah, I think he can help you get green, make the green. But I would be very surprised if he makes optimal. I mean, he'd have to dominate the race and still finish top 5.
Not going to be in the optimum, I highly doubt.
Yeah, but if you're just going for a little bit safer play, just trying to, win a little bit of money, kind of play. I don't want to say safe because starting third as super speedway is not safe, but he is a good driver. Right below him, he's back, Mr. Larson.
But he's
not
13.
Not overly impressive in the duels.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I don't even think they showed him on TV, but maybe once. I think he's got a little bit of a rough start to the season ahead of him. But I know he's going to be good at some point this year. But I'm going to have a hard time wanting to play him at his price point, $8,500, starting 13th.
Yeah, starting right where he's at, it really doesn't open up much value for him. He would have to win pretty much to reach value, in my opinion, and lead some laps. He's, like you said, he's got a car that didn't show a ton of speed, but his Team Hendrick, they're going to get it dialed in. He could be competitive. I just don't see this race really being the one that he finds his step.
Yeah. He may play it safe right around the back and just hope that everyone wrecks in front of him and is there at the end. And that might be a good strategy, but I don't expect to see him out front even early on competing for the lead. But I'm excited to see what he can do, what the team can do. But the guy below him, price-wise, $8,300, starting 4th, Austin Dillon, won the second duel, put a heck of a move, got a heck of a run on Bubba Wallace, cut it hard to the left, dropped below him, and there was nothing Bubba could do.
And these kind of races are play into Austin Dillon's hand. We saw him win.
He's a former 500 winner.
Yeah, and we saw him win at Texas, which is kind of, in my opinion, a wild card race that is very similar in nature.
Yeah.
So we see him very successful in these type of races. And starting 4th, again, somebody that it's risky. Somebody that could win. I'm going to probably throw a few bucks on him outside of the DraftKings platform, but he's somebody that's there at the front every single super speedway race if he stays out of the mess and keeps his car clean.
He is one of those guys most weeks I do not want to roster because it's so hard to predict what Austin Dillon and his team are going to do. And they're always in this position where they're usually starting a little too far up, or they starting too far back and they don't have good equipment that week. I'm going to probably sprinkle in a little bit of Dillon because he's a super speedway racer. He's good. But the guy right below him, Ricky Stenhouse, is another guy that is very similar, in my opinion, to Austin Dillon. I hate when I have to roster him, but he's starting 21st at 8,100. You got to play him, right?
Yeah, you have to have him. He's one of those guys that has been referred to as Ricky Stenhouse
Yeah.
Jr. So
he is known by that name.
He's
correct?
very aggressive. He's very aggressive, and it is something that could benefit you in a super speedway scenario. So I will have some exposure to him. I'm just very similar situation to your Austin Dillon. I guess whenever you have to play him, you kind of get antsy. Same goes whenever I have to put Stenhouse in mine. I'll have some. I'm not going to go overly crazy with him. If he was starting more 30th, then yeah. But starting 21st, not near as enticing.
Yeah, and he didn't look overly impressive in the duel that he was in, but he still made some moves. He's still going to be. You will see him up towards the front at some point, and maybe before he wrecks, of course. But I think you'll see him up here. But I think I'm going to have the hardest time picking between him and the guy right below him, 7,900, starting 2 spots further back, Matty D. Definitely in better equipment than Ricky Stenhouse is in. Not as well known for his plate racing abilities or super speedway racing abilities. Do you feel like those are very similar plays this week? Or are you going to be playing any Matty D?
Well, I'll play a little bit, just kind of like the Stenhouse, just to have a little bit of exposure to him. I think they're going to lend themselves to be very similar in value because of the price tag being very, very close and the starting position being very similar. The guy that right below them, though, Ross Chastain, starting 34th, he's $100 cheaper than Matty D. He has a little bit more upside because of that place differential, so I'll probably look there a little bit more.
Safer play for sure.
Has more upside and is a little bit safer, so that's why I would, for $7,800 starting 34th, go with Ross Chastain.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I will definitely have a good amount of exposure to Ross Chastain. He's in good equipment.
He's aggressive.
He is aggressive. I think last year in Xfinity, he really learned to kind of temper that aggressiveness just a little bit. We didn't see him win any races, but he was competitive in almost every race. Yeah, he got into it a few times, but not nearly the same amount as the Truck Series. So I think he'll be aggressive, but he's going to be smart in this race. Like you said, starting 34th, pretty reasonable price tag. He was good in this race last year in much worse equipment. He's a good solid play in my opinion this week.
Yeah, and then we get down to Christopher Bell and Bubba Wallace, both starting 5th and 6th. So another couple guys that looked really fast.
Basically the same price, too.
Yeah, looked really fast in all the scenarios that we got to see them earlier in the week. What are you going to do? Are you going to have any exposure to both those guys or either one of them?
It's going to be tough to be able to put, I think, either of those guys in there. If they're starting too
confidently
high up,
at least.
Yeah. I may do one lineup that has both of them because if they hit, awesome. They're going to be low owned. Most people, Bubba will probably have higher ownership than Bell. But 5th and 6th at that price, I think it's tough. Wallace was really aggressive in the duels. It seemed like every time someone would pop up in front of him, he would shake him out immediately. And I think that really hurt him at the end of the race because as soon as he would make a move, those guys were paying that favor right back. So I think it's going to be hard for Bubba Wallace to survive this race, have a good finish, pay off the price tag, and really be worth the roster spot in your lineup.
Yes, and then we get down to the guy right below him that replaced Bubba in the 43 car, Eric Jones at 7,300, starting 31st. In my opinion, is one of the plays I'm most excited about.
Yeah, the next two plays are probably there's no locks in NASCAR DFS,
and there's no locks,
and there's certainly no locks in super speedway racing. Absolutely no such thing as a lock. But these two guys are as close to locks. They will be most likely my highest owned drivers because Eric Jones starting 31st, Tyler Reddick starting 29th. Really reasonable price tags. Reddick's in really fast equipment. He just got up kind of involved in someone else's mess, I believe, in the duels. I'm not quite sure what happened to Eric Jones, but he was up front for a while too.
Well, both of them lost the draft whenever they came into pit.
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah.
So they just didn't time it right, and that typically won't happen whenever you have all their cars on the racetrack. That was half the pack, and I don't think that really plays into how fast of cars they could potentially have.
They were both up there competing. So those are going to be my two highest owned drivers. I'm pretty confident in that without actually having built any lineups, though I know that those guys are going to be up there.
Yeah, and then we get down to that threshold that I find 7,000 and below where you can potentially find a lot of value. Ryan Newman starts out that category. We see him finish, seems to be at the front every single time we're at a super speedway, even at Daytona. We saw it last year. Unfortunately, it didn't end well, but what are your thoughts on Ryan Newman this time around? Starting 7th.
It's going to be really tough to roster Ryan Newman because he's starting 7th. One of the biggest things that is usually the benefit of using Ryan Newman is he's starting 15th, 20th, 25th, somewhere around in there. It's going to be tough. I will have exposure to him because, man, it'd just be awesome to see him get redemption here after last year. And he, like you said, he is there at the end of most of these races. Even if he's upside down, he's still crossing the finish line, a good spot. So I'm going to have a little bit of Newman, but yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and then you get to Chris Buescher starting 22nd. He's somebody I find I keep on putting in my lineup whenever at super speedways. He just finds a way to get towards the front, and I'm going to sprinkle him in starting 22nd. He's right there on that cusp.
Yeah, Yeah, we have him projected pretty well value-wise. He's over, in our projection, he's over 6x in value, and that's going to be something that you're going to want. And starting 22nd in that Roush 17, I think it's a good play. I'm going to be having some of him. Someone I probably won't have very much of, though, the guy right below him, Cole Custer at 6,700. He's got a DNF percentage. Although it's only 4 races, it's still 75% of the time he's hitting a DNF. And he did not look good during the duels. The clash, he ended up pulling off the track and it was smoking. He wrecked right at the very end of the whichever clash he was in. It was a mess for Cole Custer this week.
Yeah, I'm not drawn to him at all. Somebody I'm going to completely
He'll
fade.
probably win now, but...
yeah, somebody I'm going to completely fade. Starting 27th, he's...
It's a tough play.
It's very tough. He's somebody that you could find himself like he was at Kentucky when he got his win there.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to make a heck of a move. It could lend itself very, very well to him. He's just so risky.
Yeah.
I have not seen it from him consistently enough to feel very confident in that.
Yeah, for sure. Chase Briscoe, his teammate, on the other hand, $100 cheaper, 3 spots further back. I don't mind him. I don't mind him this week.
And that's who
and he's a rookie.
And that's who I would put my money towards, just because I think he's, even though I haven't seen him at the Cup level, I'm willing to take that risk because the position, the point differential, the value is just a little bit better. I'm just going to go with that risk. I'm more willing to take that risk.
Yeah. Jamie McMurray, coming out of retirement. Most people probably know him from the Fox broadcast now. Does a great job. Really insightful. Really like listening to his insight on what's happening with NASCAR, the different series and whatnot. Probably won't have much to any exposure with Jamie McMurray. I don't think he's going to have a great car, although that doesn't mean too much. But he's starting 19th. If you need some salary relief and you want a guy that you think might be able to miss some wrecks, he's not a bad play. But he's not high on my radar this week.
Yeah, he's not. He could have some speed. He could pan out well, but starting 17th or 19th, I mean, he's right there. You could use him in some scenarios where you need some salary relief, but I would look at some drivers a little bit below that just to add some value.
Right. Right below him, we got Michael McDowell, 6,300. He starts 17th. He's another one of those guys, normally starts a little further back, but he's somehow finds his way through the accidents and all that stuff. I have a hard time wanting to play him this week starting 17th. I don't see as much upside, but 6,300 is not too bad.
Yeah.
How do you feel about McDowell this week?
He could reach 5X pretty easily if he's able to stay within that finishing position. He might fade to the back, miss some accidents, and make some additional spots up later on in the race. He's typically there whenever it's close to the end. He's got a top 15 car, in my opinion, so he's somebody that you might have exposure to because he's had quite a bit of success in being able to be consistent in these finishes. But I'm looking at Austin Cindric at 6,100, 39th place. I'd rather take more of a risk with him in that price range.
Yeah, Austin Cindric, 6,100, starting 39th. He does not have to do very much to reach any sort of value. He's one of the safest plays. He actually looked really good, but he get caught up, I think, in the accident. And I think he was in the second duel, and he got caught up in the accident, and that's how he got in. No, I guess he was the first duel.
Yeah,
but he's in Penske equipment. So he's gonna have some speed. They're gonna get that car dialed in, and he's not a terrible super speedway racer in Xfinity. I like him. He's probably gonna be very highly owned, I would imagine, starting 39th. One of the safest plays. Definitely gonna have some exposure to him.
Yeah, and then you get to somebody right below Austin Cindric and Ryan Preece at 6,000, starting 11th. If he was starting further back, he'd be on my radar. He's somebody that's showed that he's can have some speed, has some experience at plate or super speedway races. Just that 11th spot, even at $6,000, I don't see him being able to reach value.
Yeah, I highly doubt he will make a single lineup, and it's not because I don't like Ryan Preece, but he's not full time this year. He's running, I think, a handful of races. They may get better sponsorships and he can run, but that's not the plan right now. He looked fast, but his history just doesn't really – he's starting just too high up for what I think he's capable of doing. Even at 6,000, like you said, it's going to be hard for him to, in my opinion, reach value even with that cheap.
So going under that $6,000 threshold down to 5,800, Corey LaJoie starting 16th. He's somebody with that price tag that you could maybe sprinkle throughout. What are your thoughts? Are you going to play him at all?
Corey LaJoie is usually okay. Besides Brennan Poole, who's not in this race, who just somehow has got the slowest car, but always ends up with the best value on these tracks. He's not racing. He's my favorite guy to play, but Corey LaJoie is probably my favorite guy to roster on super speedways because typically he's not in the best equipment, although it looks like he's maybe got a little bit of upgrade this year versus last. So we'll see what happens there. But I love playing him. He plays it smart. He misses the wrecks, and he's usually getting top 15, top 10 finishes, which is great because he's usually cheap. The problem this week, though, in this race, he's starting 16th, which is about 4 to 8 spots higher than what I would really like for him.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be nice to see him a little bit lower down to really pay off that, or have a better chance of paying off that value tag. Daniel Suarez, David Reagan, to me, are very similar plays. I don't know that we can see them having consistencies throughout because Daniel Suarez is with a new team. David Reagan's not a full-time driver doing this, so if they were further back, 18th and 15th is where they're at respectively. It's just hard.
Reagan's got more experience. I think he's probably the better super speedway racer or driver between the two. I think Suarez is in a little bit better equipment, but like you said, it's just, even though they're so cheap, there's some guys right below them who are even cheaper who have that PD upside and that safety net. So we'll see how the lineups shape out. I may roster a little bit of Suarez and David Reagan, but it's they're in a tough spot for me this week.
So you go down the list from here, and I don't know if we really need to talk about anybody except for these next two guys because the other guys are going to be a little bit further back in the pack and really probably be in some lawnmowers for the most part. But Anthony Alfredo being 5,200, 36th, he's a rookie. We haven't really seen much from him. I don't know what to expect. He's taken over John Hunter Nemechek's ride.
And John Hunter, he had a good start to the season last year. Teammate of Michael McDowell. Not great equipment, but not terrible. They're kind of that mid-tier team. So he's got, for most of the guys that he's starting around, he's going to have the best equipment. So he's got potential to move up, but he does not have the experience. He's a rookie. I think he ran like half the season last year in Xfinity, and he did great every time. He's actually kind of a fan favorite. He seems like a cool dude, but yeah, I think he's in a tough spot overall as far as being real dominant this season. But in this race, I'll have him. I'll have a little bit of him.
Yeah, and I'll have a little bit, but I'll have a little bit. I think more Kaz Gralla starting 40th. He's the next guy on the list. He's under that $5,000 threshold at 4,900. To me, that just ups the value potential. He's in colleague equipment, so I'm not 100% sure how much speed he's going to have, but I think he's going to be a little bit quicker than McLeod, Bilicki, Half, Ware, Gase, and Cope. Those guys below.
He should be able to pass all those guys almost immediately. So that would be practically 10 spots up right there. And if he can miss one of I'm sure there'll be a couple bigger wrecks. If he can get through that, even if he gets taken out later in the race, he finishes like 25th, even top 25. If he happen to get a top 20, that's all you need from him at that price point. Yeah, if he gets a top 10, then you have to have him. He's in the optimal, but you don't need too much from Kaz, and I don't think it's going to be too difficult for him to reach a high value, which is what you're going to want.
Yeah, so we pretty much went through the entire driver pool that's available on DraftKings for the Daytona 500. What we've done in our race guide is we've placed some drivers in the place differential pool, and then what we call the value pool. So the value pool is drivers that are under 7K that we feel have a great chance of reaching value based on their situation at this specific race, in this specific racetrack, in this specific scenario, so that this changes week in and week out.
Oh, yeah.
So the PD pool that we have has a lot of the drivers that are 7,000 and above that we feel have a great chance of having some success and paying off their price tag and adding value. So in that same setup, we typically build a list of a couple core lineup builds. We give you 3 drivers, which is basically half of a typical lineup build, and leave you with some cash to build the rest of the lineup.
Yeah. So we still got to go through that a little bit, but I'll tell you right now, out of the guys that you're talking about, you got to have some exposure to Hamlin. I know he's up at the top, but Brad, Truex, Stenhouse, Benedetto, Chastain, and our 2 favorites, Eric Jones and Tyler Reddick, they're all in that driver pool, and they all need to be somewhere sprinkled in your lineups.
Oh, for sure. Those are who we're really high on for this specific race because of their performance in past races. We also have a driver spotlight tab within our race guide that we visually allow you to see some high value upside picks, some solid value plays, and some guys to stay away from or be cautious of. These guys are guys that we've looked at through the data and just want to make you aware of. So the DraftKings information that we're pulling from is going to be available to you in this race guide. That's downloadable every week. So this is something that we're really excited to discuss every week with each other, and now we want to bring it to you.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit because this is the first week. We're going to be sharing this with you for a few weeks. So because this is the first race of the year, we don't have a ton to go off of so far. Our checker drivers, these are the guys that we really like to win. We're going with our season picks. We like Hamlin, and we like Blaney. Hamlin is obviously a better play just because of the place differential, even though he's a little bit more. But Blaney, I think, is another guy. I know he's not as high up on your radar, but you can see it too. He's good at these type of tracks. So those are our guys that we're really looking at as far as being there at the end, contending for the win.
Yeah, and with somebody that we think that it's going to have some value overall by the time it's all said and done based on performance points and all the key metrics that you're looking for.
Right. So our favorite, we've mentioned this, we've alluded to it, but what we call our green flag plays, these are guys that generally are going to have the PD upside, high finishing potential upside.
Just solid value overall.
Solid value, really core guys that you're going to want to have. And for this race, it's Eric Jones and Tyler Reddick. We both like them. We've told you already why we like them. So that's why those guys made that list. It's a tough one this for Daytona, but those are our 2 favorite. But the main reason why we're really bringing this up is the 2 guys that there's one guy we really want to caution. I wouldn't say avoid him. But Eric Almirola, he's our yellow flag. He's just a guy you want to be a little cautious on. Play him a little bit. It's kind of a high risk, sort of high reward kind of play with him. That's why he makes the yellow flag this week. It's just hard to really feel confident in that play. So that's why we went with him. And then our red flag, this is a guy, we have a hard time wanting to eliminate anybody from the driver pool when it comes to super speedways because there's such a wild card race. But we talked about it earlier. Ryan Preece is a tough play for me this week, and I think you feel the same way.
Yeah, he's just somebody that in some scenarios I would be more than willing to roster him, but just starting 11th with his price tag and not being a full-time driver, it's just too risky. I don't want to have any exposure to him whatsoever, and that's why he's my red flag.
Yeah. So that's a breakdown of our race guide. We love building this thing for you every week. So with all that being said, Joe, let them know how they can follow us on our socials.
Yeah, well, we're on Twitter and Instagram at the DK Garage. Let's definitely Twitter is where we like to be most active. It's more engaging and where we want to see comments and feedback from you.
Right. If you're listening on the audio only, Spotify, Apple iTunes, wherever you may be listening to this, be sure to give us a follow. And then if you're watching this video on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop us a comment. Let us know how your lineups did after the race. We want to hear. We want to hear a little bit back from you guys.
Yeah, and if there's anything that you didn't see that you want to see, or anything along those lines, we want to be engaging and interactive. So please leave as many comments as possible.
Yeah. So with all that being said, we'll see you guys next week.